My name is Sharon Watson, MBE DL, and I am the CEO and the principal of the Northern School of Contemporary Dance in Leeds. So I would describe myself or my leadership as, and it changes. It really does change, and I think it's encompassing as a leader. I don't know if there is a label that I would absolutely say this is who I am and this is how I operate, because throughout my career I've had to become different leaders for different circumstances. And that's not to say that anything is in any way lesser than. I just think it requires a different kind of leadership. And it's quite significant. It's not just a case of putting on a different hat. You almost find different ways in which you understand the power of your leadership. Sometimes I can be a leader and you not know I'm in the room. And that's understanding, I think, how I need to operate in the spaces in which I operate. So I don't have a label for it, but I know that there's something about lily padding leadership that is quite important. Again, describing what I do and why I do it is an interesting place to take myself, because I've always seen myself as someone who is questioning and challenging, but also I can look at a circumstance and question why, personally, why, and actually open that up in terms of, are we doing the right thing? I mean, a lot of it sits in the kind of human justice and equality of people. And I remember my father saying to me, you do what you do because you're worth it. And just remember that. And that was quite a young age. I didn't really know what he meant. And it wasn't the advert that made it relevant. He just, you're worth it. You know you've got something to offer. So you'll figure it out. And I think over the years I have. So there's a part of me that I love to give over in terms of support, in terms of being abbacative, in terms of questioning and challenging. But also I've been in front of an audience that has appreciated the hard work that I've done, the creativity that I offer, and the rewards of taking a curtain call, which is so rewarding. I do now what I do because I remember those experiences. I remember how that made me feel. I remember the messages that it's putting over to an audience. I recall the sensations of my fellow colleagues. I recall sometimes unpicking the challenges and finding a place. I don't know if I can say I've ever found that place to settle, but I know I've found the place to explore. And by doing that, I've enabled myself to step out of my comfort zone very often. Through a lived experience, this is not just guesswork, this is all through something that I believe in, and also believe that it's valuable for other people too. So I do step into that space, and I enjoy it. So my dancing career has been quite a broad one, and I'm still in my dancing career effectively, being the CEO and the principal of a contemporary dance school, a vocational school, the only one outside of London that's doing what it does. You can't ignore the fact that actually there are some grounds that have been broken here and some steps that I'm taking, whether they've been choreographed or not. It feels as though there's something about my journey that sort of has steered me in a way and built my confidence to be able to say I'm no longer on the stage, but the stage in which I operate is really relevant to the people that I want to communicate with right now. And having been a professional dancer, one of only 4 women that joined an all-black male dance company, which was never really something I foresaw back in the day, but watched it with admiration and with pride to think that actually this was a moment in time that is marking an opportunity, and one that I could admire from a distance, and one that I'm quite happy to pay my money to go and see. But then realizing actually that very company became an opportunity for me, and I directed that company, having danced with the company for maybe I think it was 8 or 9 years, was the rehearsal and tour director of the company, which meant that I was learning the ropes and really putting that company out on the road. And then years later, spending 11 years as the artistic director, I think is a gift and a massive privilege to be able to influence and be influenced, but also understanding what that meant. Company's over 40 years old now, and its sustainability has been a challenge, but it never should have been. And knowing that I've played a very significant role in keeping the pegs in the ground and keeping the focus and understanding its USP, not being afraid to call the company a black dance company in spite of the challenges and the kind of the rhetoric around all of that. So the ownership of that, because I do feel as though that's a part of me, and I will continue to own that in spite of whether it's here tomorrow. It's just led so many in a direction of travel that perhaps would never have happened if it wasn't there. The company I had the privilege and the pleasure of performing with is Phoenix Dance Theatre. I got the call back in '89 to join the company, and at the time I was working for another company in London. I hadn't expected it, but I was very disappointed that at the time when I heard about the other women that joined the company had already had the call and they weren't sure whether they were going to call me because I was already in a good job. It's like, you can't do that. That's just not possible. I got the call and I was delighted that I accepted. The job was only supposed to be for 6 months initially. That's how much money we had. And the 4 women joined the 6 men, and it was Phoenix on the road. Phoenix Plus, it was magical. And people still reminisce about that now, around that history that we made, which we were just dancers at the time. We never realized the impact that we were having. And I look back at that and realized that actually I'd found my calling. And again, hadn't realized just the depths of that calling and what that would mean for the likes of myself, those that look like me, and for those that were following, and the work that I felt that I was able to contribute whilst I was with the organisation. So there's a lot of changes, a lot of happy, incredible moments. We toured the world. We had the most envious tours, but at the same time we were really challenged with the dance sector and how the words and the actions of others were trying to dictate what this company should be, what it could be, what it was supposed to serve, who it was supposed to serve, and ultimately we wanted it to serve people that looked like us. Well, times have kind of built that confidence to do what we do. And yeah, I guess the unapologetic approach and not apologizing for being who I am is something that I have to live with on a day-to-day basis and own it. Absolutely own it. Walk the walk, do the talk. And I guess dealing with the consequence of that is that there are labels that follow you. There are actions that also follow you. And it's possible that there's just a sense that people are cautious around who you are and what you do. But I don't think yes, I have a choice, but I wouldn't want it any other way. And I don't think the people that do the walk just need to be sure that actually it's for a real purpose. Its relevance is significant to where we are now. And someone, including myself, needs to be brave enough to go, yeah, actually, let's not apologize for who we are, what we look like, what it is that we want, who we want it for, and how we can make it happen. So here I am. It was interesting when I was interviewed for the role of CEO and principal of the Northern School of Contemporary Dance, because the history of this space and this building, it's set within a community, and a community that looks like me. It was, in its early days, the majority of the students looked like me. Moving 20, 30 years later, that isn't the case. And I think some of the challenges around inclusion and diversity have been challenged and questionable around how and why. I think a lot of people in the community look at this space that we're in the heart of Chapeltown in Leeds, and say, well, where are we? And how are we not engaging? And do you not see us? Do you not want us? And I heard those questions as I arrived as the principal of this school. Not nice, not comfortable. It was one of the questions in my interview around black female, about to take up a post running the only conservatoire outside of London delivering contemporary dance. How are you going to help me? Where do I get the help from? And knowing that actually there'll be students that will be looking at me and asking the same questions of me. How are you going to help me in an environment that perhaps I am clearly the minority? My talent may not be recognized in the same way, or I might not be able to find my own space within this environment. What are you going to do? I remember the whole situation 4 years ago with George Floyd and the challenges that posed, But the heartbreaking situation, I mean, I turned my computer on and it was a case of I was invited to a Zoom. And on that Zoom were maybe 20 people from the global majority. And they just said, "Thank God you're here, Sharon." And that was it. I was, wow, it's like, okay, but they could not have done that in a different situation because there was nobody else here that could take on that conversation. So there's some real challenges around inequality, some real challenges around equality. And I guess in a way, when we look at the history of this space and the successes of the organization, we have to reflect and give credit to what's gone before, but we can't sit and just think what's happening for our current future is okay. It really isn't. And the sector requires more, and we require more to inform the sector of the changes and the challenges, I think, for people from the global majority. So to get the school to understand that this is an area of conversation that might make you feel uncomfortable. It might make you question, have I been doing the right things, or am I able to do the right things? I don't believe there is any such thing as unconscious bias, it's bias. And therefore we bring it into a space where it has to be transparent. And whilst I enter that space, I do invite the staff, the students, to meet me halfway. I can't do this job on my own, and not that I believe I have that responsibility on my own. So there are staff members and students that are willing to help me with the challenges and the questioning around the equality and the diversity that we perhaps lack a little at this stage of our development. So the voices of others becomes very relevant and very poignant at this moment in time. And I encourage that anyone, I mean, that's comfortable space where we all stand in sometimes, to be silent in that space is a choice. So be aware of that. I'm not often silent, but I also need to listen. And I think there is a strength and a power when I'm able to listen. And I'm able to listen because I believe that my surroundings and the people that are in it understand how they're operating and what the challenges are. So they can take up the mantle and question and make change, impact and action. For the students addressing mental health, over the last few years, we've seen an increase in support that's required. Very often that is external support, and I welcome that, but I also welcome the diversity of support. So it's not just one, there isn't one method or the one individual that manages that. So our students know they can go for help in various ways. The school also has sessions that allows a student to find that time to decompress, and it becomes part of the program. So I absolutely appreciate that we do that collectively. And for our staff, it's a conversation. We might not have the answers for you in this space, so you need to tell us where you need to be and how you find that. And for me, personally, I have some very good friends around me. I have some incredible people that will always talk to me about, absolutely, what are you doing about your mental health? Taking that walk on a Sunday morning with particular individuals, helping me to decompress also. I find that I do that with music, and there's a range of soundtracks that helps me just to switch off and take myself out of the space. The many different ways I love being in spaces where I'm not the center of attention, where I can absolutely disappear if I need to. That's just as relaxing, and sometimes it's going to my own gigs where I can just appreciate that it's about other people, and yeah, there's times when I just need to lay down and relax, and I can do that with my family. I do recall being a 9-year-old and going to Hare Hulls Middle School, and it was my first lesson of dance where I felt that I loved it so much. I went home and said to my parents, at 16, I'm going to London. And my parents saying, when you're 16, oh yeah, we'll talk about it over the years. 16 came and my bags were packed. And I was supported by an individual, a school teacher, that said, you can do this. This is something that you're good at. And if you give it the attention, I'm sure you'll be amazing at it. It felt like the right thing. It felt like I found my calling. But the difference is, I guess, what was so beautiful about it was that my parents didn't really have an idea of what it could do, what it could be, but they didn't say to me, that's not for you. Go and try it. Go and see what it feels like. Go and make your future. And who knows? I said to my mum when I was a dancer that at some point I'd love to run a company. And actually I'd love to have my own school. And I remember again getting the job and turning up at my mum's house on Saturday morning after being told on the Friday evening and saying to my mum, I've got a new job. And she was in the kitchen and it was Saturday, so Saturday soup's being cooked and all of that. And she just said, baby, you got something to say? I said, yeah. You see that T-shirt, Mum, that you've got on? And she had the school's T-shirt on. I said, I'm going to be running that building. And I've got the job and she just went, oh yeah, of course you have. You told me that 16 years ago. And you just think, oh my goodness, okay, you don't really know how much you're manifesting your journey and how much this is happening in the pathways that you're making happen. And I think the freedom to know that I can be different, but I have to forge forward. When I look at the students that come to the school and the students that look like me, on the global majority students, you don't have to be me to do this, that your space needs to be carved for you. And the industry needs to accept the difference, not necessarily you as the person. We have to make space for difference. And I just love that because we survived a lot without realizing how much we were being change makers, how much we were sacrificing, and how incredibly satisfying that journey was without realizing the impact of what we were doing. And I see that with the students now, that if any of them come back to me, which they have done, I have to say, actually it was that one word that happened that you said, it was that one moment that we spoke, it was that to say, I can do this, I can be this, and not apologize for being different. Vision is an incredible thing, and not everyone has the gift. So acknowledging that first of all is important. And I think a lot of the students that come and want to have this creative career, for them to own what that vision is, for them to own their place with that is important. And it's about the collective vision as opposed to one individual that says it's about me. When it becomes internal, you're talking about something very different, or you're talking about a very different person. So the vision, I believe, in moving forward is also about the acceptance, because I don't believe this journey can be done in isolation at any given moment. However wonderful and amazing you are, it's not about being in isolation. And sometimes your vision is also about, yeah, you can take that forward, but you are not the person to implement. You're not the person to make those significant. You have to hand over sometimes and be led by others and be encouraged by others. And I think that is through performance and going, actually, I'm relinquishing this moment in time because others need to take the reins, and being okay with that. So I do love that. And I say, as I said, not everyone has the ability to say, actually, I can do this from being in the position of the back row. I could do this from being in the position behind the computer, or I can do this in a position where I can say this to you and you need to know that actually believe what you're doing and run with it. So collaboration for me comes in many different forms. And I think this organisation, we're great at collaboration. We're great at collaboration in a particular direction as well, where we know that we're giving the students the platform to really stand strong. And, we've got students that are all over the world. And if we continue with that as a methodology of education and change, then I'll be happy with that. I can only add to that. I don't want to take anything away. So I'm happy to know that actually, even thinking about succession planning, because I won't be here forever, what happens when I'm gone? What am I embedding as a form of legacy? And at the moment, that's quite hard to say what it is, because other people talk to you about your legacy and other people recognize the changes because you're just getting on with it. And sometimes when you're able to reflect on that, you go, oh my goodness, all right, yes, I can see that. Hadn't realized that actually now you see the building as open, whereas you didn't before. Or now you see that you can see yourself, whereas you didn't before. And even though they might sound like very small things, they're huge. And they're huge because they have to mean something to so many people. And that's not always an easy job because, keeping the doors closed is probably the easiest thing to do. That's not what we're about.